With this D-Max, Isuzu has become a credible force to be reckoned with in the growing UK pickup sector. An efficient 2.5 litre twin turbocharged diesel can haul and tow hefty loads through the wildest terrain you're likely to come across, and there are 3 body styles to suit a wide range of buyers. Smart, tough and affordable, it looks set to do very well. If you want a job done properly, you call in a specialist. And when the job in question is that of creating a reassuringly over-engineered pickup, then for British buyers, the specialist in question is undoubtedly Isuzu. Japan's oldest vehicle manufacturer is the only brand available to UK buyers that for decades has dedicated itself to the very specific needs of pickup people, with rugged utilitarian TF and then Rodeo models that were light on lifestyle but tough to beat. Which was fine if all you wanted was a dependable workhorse to lug things about, but not so good if you also wanted something that could be a bit more car-like at the end of the day. Something like this, Isuzu's D-Max. Car-like might be overstating things a bit. To be truly car-like, this vehicle would have to compromise on hefty underpinnings that remain perfectly suited to the working week. But within the confines of the kind of vehicle a pickup like this can be, this D-Max represents a huge dynamic step forward, as it must do in order to be able to combat competitors of the calibre of Ford's Ranger, the Volkswagen Amarok, Toyota's Hilux and Nissan's Navara. Launched here early in 2012, it's safer, more powerful, more spacious and much better looking than its Rodeo predecessor, as well as offering lower running costs, more equipment and more off-road capability. Rivals, of course, claim similar virtues, but too often they're to be found tucked away in the corner of a sales showroom dedicated to selling passenger cars. Will such a place really support a dedicated pickup person when they most need it? And will the product on offer really be as capable in the Serengeti as it is in Surbiton? With this D-Max, you know you've little to worry about on either score. With Isuzu, it was always that way. It's just that with this model, there's now a little more polish to the product on offer. Let's try it. Have you ever bought something and found that it's a bit underspecified for the job you have in mind? Annoying, isn't it? Sometimes it's good to choose something that's exactly the opposite. A watch, say, that's waterproof down to 200 metres. A quad-band mobile phone. Or perhaps this Isuzu D-Max pickup. This thing feels completely bulletproof in a way that, amongst rivals, only Toyota's more expensive Hilux can match. And this thing has got far more pulling power than Top Gear's favourite, despite costing no more to run. Pulling power, in fact, is the first thing that you notice about this D-Max once out on the road. Though there's only a single 4-cylinder 2.5 litre twin-turbo diesel engine choice now on offer, it's exactly the kind of power plant you'd want in a vehicle of this kind, with 163 PS on tap and, more importantly, a hefty 400 newton meters of torque developed from as low as 1400 RPM, so that urban driving is easy and tough muddy inclines are straightforward. It's also a major reason why all variants of this vehicle, apart from the 4x2 single cab, can tow a brake trailer of up to 3.5 tonnes, making this vehicle a class leader in the pickup sector. On the move, the engine isn't the most refined of its type, but it is a big step forward from older Isuzu units in this respect, helped by the fact that the designers have gone to a great deal of trouble to soundproof both the cabin and the engine bay to what they hope are passenger car-like standards. In fact, almost everything about this vehicle is more cultured and car-like than owners of its predecessor, the Isuzu Rodeo, will remember. The steering, for example. It's not exactly what you call sharp, but it is a lot better than you might expect. And it's surprisingly easy to use in tight urban parking and turning situations, with a turning circle that's 11.8 metres in the two-wheel drive version and 12.2 metres in the 4x4 that I'm using here. Also better than you might expect is the shift quality of the 6-speed manual gearbox, or if you prefer, the 5-speed automatic that I'm using here. Opt for a 4-wheel driven variant, and there are certainly plenty of options in using it, with a high range set of gears that can be operated in 2 or 4-wheel drive, and a low range set of ratios for the really mucky stuff. Most of the time though, you'll be driving the vehicle on tarmac like I am now, in which format it'll operate in 2-wheel drive. That's a rear driven 2-wheel drive format, and that gives you better economy and extra steering feel. Not enough to make you want to chuck this vehicle around, mind you. Plonk your right boot on the throttle with an empty load bay and a wet roundabout, and this pickup will be unsettled just like any other, as the laws of physics go to work. The leaf-sprung rear suspension can also feel a bit fidgety on country lanes, but as is usual with this type of vehicle, both scenarios can be very much improved if you're carrying a bit of weight in the back. Certainly the coil springs and dampers that carry the front axle in this design do a much more effective job than the crude old torsion bar arrangement that this model's predecessor, the Rodeo, had. That car had the same tough ladder frame chassis you'll find in this one, but there the similarities between the two models largely end. This D-Max has what's called I-grip underpinnings, that's standing for Isuzu Gravity Response Intelligent Platform. And these are up to 42% stiffer than those of the old Rodeo, helped very much by improved cross bracing that helps with stability under towing or when heavily loaded. For wet or icy tarmac or light off-piste work, you'll be taking the opportunity to twist this dial behind the gear stick to 4H, or 4 high range all-wheel drive. Doing so takes about a second or so for the front wheels to engage, but when they do, the vehicle feels notably more composed on slippery surfaces and more capable, of course. But once in a while you'll need to do more, and you'll be twisting this dial a bit further to 4L, or 4 low range, something you can only do when the vehicle's stopped. In this mode you really do get an incredibly accomplished off-roader, aided by a first gear ratio that's set to be an ideal crawler gear over rough terrain on which you'll appreciate a ground clearance of 235mm. That's a lot more than most rival pickups will offer. In extremis, you'll also appreciate useful approach and departure angles of 30 and 22 degrees respectively, plus a ramp angle of 22 degrees and a traversing angle of 49 degrees. And in deep mud, well, a clever brake traction control system developed to replace the old Rodeo's limited slip differential helps here no end. If you're in a scenario where only one of your wheels has meaningful traction, that's the scenario in which the old Rodeo would often get stuck, then this system is clever enough to figure out that it needs to send torque, send power to that wheel and crawl you out of trouble. You can also disengage the system for those moments when you want to deliberately generate wheel spin in order to scour away a slippery top surface in order to generate traction. Styling hasn't been a priority for Isuzu pickups of the past that offered rugged, squirrel looks, big wheels, lots of chrome and not a lot else. In a market segment increasingly reaching out to lifestyle buyers, a bit more effort was required this time around. Hence this D-Max's adoption of a more rakish, wedgier look that's supposed to look tough, poised and ready for work. Hence the adoption of a larger front grille on a front end decorated with daytime running lights and flowing in to A-pillars that have been moved forward by 100mm and are set at a more acute angle, flowing into a lower roofline. At the rear you'll find a set of largest in class tail lamps which feature LEDs on high specification variants like this one. Climb inside, easier than you might expect thanks to these wide opening doors, and you'll find an interior that's hard wearing and cleanly styled. It's difficult to get the cabin right in a vehicle like this. If it's too plush, then it'll be rejected by operators wanting a properly tough working vehicle. But too basic, and it'll be rejected by private buyers wanting to drive the vehicle themselves. Now, this D-Max manages to get a decent balance between these two extremes, starting with a 3-spoke steering wheel that's very nice to hold and features steering wheel mounted controls on most models. I'm not quite so sure about the air conditioning and ventilation system, though with plusher models like this one, controls for which are situated in this rather unusual circular array that sits beneath the stereo. I found it a little distracting at first because I had to take my eyes off the road to make adjustments, though after a while it becomes second nature. I still think though that I prefer the less stylish but ergonomically superior buttons of the more basic layout that you get in standard models. As a whole, ergonomically, the buttons and the switchgear are really very good, with broad, chunky buttons that you can easily operate with freezing cold hands or when you're wearing gloves. Though the front door bins could be bigger, cabin storage space is otherwise much improved on that of older Isuzu models, with lockable glove box on premium range models, a pop-up compartment on top of the dash, a storage shelf underneath the steering column, a deep lidded box between the seats, and a sunglasses holder above the windscreen. You've also got enough cup holders here for an in-car espresso gathering. You even get them here in the back. A more comfortable place to be than I'd expected, thanks to the way that extra vehicle length and a longer wheelbase facilitate more room for heads, legs and knees. Now, there's a trio of 3-point seat belts provided, but in truth 3 adults would be a little cramped here on a long journey. It is a very versatile rear section though. As with most pickups, you get a fold forward rear seat back so that you can accommodate packages that you may want to keep away from the elements. But unlike most, this one has the versatility of 60-40 split folding seat bases. And as part of those seat bases, you've also got these really useful concealed compartments for keeping smaller items out of sight or just away from the paraphernalia of everyday life. It's a job to know where to start when describing a model range as wide as this one. After all, a D-Max can be anything from a reliable building site workhorse to a weekend toy for taking with you when you go windsurfing. Prices start at around the £15,000 mark, excluding VAT, for the entry-level 2-wheel drive single cab variant. You can pay a further £2,250 on top of that to get that model with 4-wheel drive, and a further £500 if you want it in extended cab form with a couple of occasional rear seats. Most buyers though will want a double cab model like the one I have here, the 4-wheel drive only lineup priced mainly in the £19,000 to £24,000 bracket, excluding VAT, depending on your choice between a wide range of trim levels. Now, do your model for model comparisons against obvious rivals like Ford's Ranger, Toyota's Hilux, Nissan's Navara or Mitsubishi's L200, and you'll find that in most cases this sort of pricing will give you a useful saving. Only the much cruder Great Wall Steed can offer a significantly cheaper option to UK double cab pickup buyers. Whichever D-Max you choose, it'll come with daytime running lights, all-round electric windows, air conditioning and a CD stereo. Bear in mind though that unless you want the single solid paint colour that's on offer, white, you'll have to pay extra for one of the optional mica or metallic shades. If you go for a plush model like I have here, then there are all kinds of extra niceties included, like roof rails, power operated folding and heated mirrors, rear parking sensors, leather trim, climate control and Bluetooth compatibility for your mobile phone. There's also a stack of safety gear built in across the range with traction and stability control, 6 airbags, a 4-channel anti-lock braking system and electronic brake force distribution, all featuring. You also get anti-whiplash head restraints and a pedestrian-friendly bonnet and front bumper arrangement, all contributing to a 4-star Euro NCAP safety test rating that is unusually good for a pickup. On to the loading practicalities, which are based around the double cab variant that most UK customers will want. Now, at about 5.3 metres long, this is a very large vehicle, so you won't be surprised to drop down the sturdy tailgate. It doesn't go right down to vertical level because of this chunky bumper, and find that there's a substantial amount of space back here. You've got 1,485 metres of length, 1,530 millimetres of width, and 465 millimetres of depth. So easily enough space for the standard Euro pallet that will slide easily between the 1,110 millimetre space between the wheel arches. A load liner is standard on plusher variants like this one, and there are 4 tie-down points around the cargo area to stop heavier items moving about, which is just as well because there's no ladder rack fitted behind the cab to protect the driver if all else fails and something really bulky slides forward. As for payload, well, you'll be able to carry between 1,058 kilograms and 1,136 kilograms, depending on the model that you choose. The heaviest payloads can be carried by the single cab variant because it weighs less than the double cab model. As you'd expect from a company with such a long track record in building pickups, Isuzu hasn't taken its eye off the ball when it comes to running costs. Thanks to competitive pricing, low insurance costs and impressive fuel economy, the D-Max looks like it's off to a good start here. But as any canny operator will know, low depreciation is the thing that can often make the difference between models with comparable showings on the spec sheet. And there's good news for owners of this Isuzu in that respect. Residual leasing company assessors Cap Monitor reckon that this vehicle in 4x4 double cab form, as I'm testing here, will return up to 39.9% of its original value back after 3 years or 60,000 miles, a figure that betters comparable rivals by a significant margin. There's an unbettered in class 5-year, 125,000 mile warranty that's transferable to second buyers and also helps beef up those residuals. Not that you're likely to need that warranty. In development, this vehicle covered over 4 million kilometres. That's the equivalent of going around the world 100 times. And it's all reinforcing the reputation for ruggedness and durability that Isuzu pickup models have. You also get 3 years of paintwork warranty and 6 years of anti-corrosion warranty, plus 3 years of roadside assistance. What else? Well, servicing is every 12,000 miles or 24 months. Insurance groupings are 8A to 11A, depending on trim for the double cab models, and CO2 emissions are a very respectable 194 grams per kilometre. Plus there's a dual exhaust gas recirculation system to cut down on NOx, nitrous oxide emissions. As for running costs, well, you'd expect the world's leading manufacturer of diesel engines to be able to create a unit capable of keeping these reasonably in check. And sure enough, this very efficient common rail Euro 5 compliant unit is able to return a class-leading 38.2 miles to the gallon combined cycle figure. Now, Isuzu reckons that this has much to do with the class-leadingly slippery 0.47 CD drag coefficient figure. It's a shape that they developed in the wind tunnel of the Japan Railways Institute, the place where the famous bullet train was born. If you thought Isuzu pickups were a bit rough and ready, then it's about time you gave the D-Max a try. Once, this was a brand really reserved for the specific requirements of commercial operators. These days, though, it'll also suit private buyers looking for an all-terrain vehicle that can play the lifestyle card, and also offer a very sensible proposition with its class-leading 3.5-tonne towing capacity and 5-year, 125,000 mile warranty. But how does it stack up in what's becoming, well, quite a crowded market? Well, very well, actually. Price-wise, it's one of the best value choices in the class. It's also a standout performer on the balance sheet. And now that the styling has been tidied up and looks so much better than Isuzu's of old, and the equipment levels are much better, it's now been able to broaden this brand's appeal to suit the sort of buyer who previously would automatically have looked to something like a Nissan Navara or a Toyota Hilux. The sort of person who might not be considering this D-Max, but probably should be.